When you're evaluating and selecting ERP software for your organization, there are 5 key common pitfalls that you want to avoid that other organizations make. That's what we'll talk about here in today's video. My name is Eric Kimberling. I'm the CEO of Third Stage Consulting. We're an independent technology agnostic consulting firm that helps clients throughout the world choose and implement different ERP systems. And as we're helping clients through ERP selection processes, we find that there's 5 common pitfalls that they tend to make. And these are common mistakes. There's nothing done that's wrong or nefarious about it, but they're things that cause a lot of problems later on and can create blind spots for you as an organization. So what I want to do today is talk about those 5 pitfalls and help you define some mitigation risks to overcome those pitfalls so that ultimately you can select the software that's going to be the best fit for your organization. Now, if you're in the middle of a software evaluation, I also encourage you to read our Software Selection Buyer's Guide. It's a free guide you can find on our website by scanning the QR code right here, or you can go to the links below. First things first, why are you doing this? Sounds simple enough. You may wonder what in the world I'm talking about, but it's amazing how many organizations cannot answer the simple question of why are we evaluating new ERP software? Now, I'll tell you the most common answer that we hear, which is also the worst answer you could possibly give. And I'm curious to hear in the comments below if this is your reason or if you've heard others say that this is their reason. And that is because we have to, because our vendor is discontinuing the old software that we're using now. If that's your number one reason, it's a reason, but it's a terrible reason. You need to have better rationale for why you're going through an ERP evaluation. And more importantly, you need to have a better reason for why you're about to go through the huge price tag, the chaos, the heartache, the pain, and the disruption that inevitably comes with any ERP implementation. The good news is it's a fairly simple question to answer, and just because you don't have an answer right now necessarily doesn't mean you can't get one. And I would highly encourage you to answer the question before you get too far down the path, because why are we doing this is such an important guideline for determining which software is going to be the best fit for you. Now, it may be that you know you're going to stay on the same platform that you're already on. It may mean that you're just going to go through an upgrade, but you have to ask yourself, are you doing that just because the vendor told you that they're going to discontinue and sunset their old product? Or is it legitimately something you really need to do and you see the business value in it? And even if the real answer is because you know you're going to have your software be discontinued, you still want to define business objectives and priorities, what it is you want to get out of the software, what you want the transformation to deliver to the organization, other than just being on a software platform that still has support and maintenance available for it. So this is something that starts at the leadership level that executives need to help define and prioritize what the strategic drivers are for the organization, including the criteria for how you're going to select and implement a new ERP solution. When we're helping clients through their evaluation process, we commonly will come up with a list of hundreds and sometimes even thousands of potential business requirements. And it is really easy to get lost in analysis paralysis when you have that many requirements. Those requirements will all become important at some point during your ERP journey, but they're oftentimes not important in the initial evaluation. Let me explain what I mean. If I'm going through the process with a client and with our team doing a requirements analysis, and I'm trying to understand what the business needs are, what the drivers are, we're going to capture every single requirement regardless of whether or not it's something that's critical to the evaluation process. Largely because every single requirement is going to be important from a requirements traceability perspective later on when you go to implement the software. But more often than not, we find an 80-20 rule applies in that 80% of the business requirements are probably going to be able to be handled pretty well by most ERP systems that are out there. But there's that 20% of your business that's different. It's your differentiator, it's your secret sauce, it's that customer-facing side of things that make you different, it's the product-facing side of things that make you different. Those are the things that can really separate and differentiate different ERP systems in the market. And those are the things you want to focus most on, those deal breakers that are things you know you have to have. And not only are they things you have to have, but they're things that not every ERP system has. So this is where having outside expertise can help, because if you have a list of 1,000 business requirements, you're probably going to want to get that list down to 1 or 200 and focus on those 1 or 200 requirements and evaluation criteria rather than trying to analyze all 1,000 plus different requirements. So that's the first thing, is understand what your deal breakers are before you get too far into the evaluation process. Another thing to understand, and a common pitfall that organizations don't seem to realize oftentimes when they go through a software evaluation process, is that cloud system deployments are going to be disruptive. And not only are they going to be disruptive, but they're going to be more disruptive than what you might have experienced with your old on-premise implementations in the past. Reason being is that cloud deployments impose more change on the organization because cloud software is what it is, and it's very difficult to change that software to be as flexible as you may have once had with your on-premise system, for better or for worse. So you have to recognize that when you're evaluating the time and cost and the risk associated with the cloud deployment, time, cost, and risk are going to be higher for your cloud deployments when you compare it to your old on-premise system in most cases. And cloud vendors might say, no, that's not true because we have our software in the cloud, we've got best practices, it's off the shelf, out of the box, it's going to work for you. The reality is it's going to be more of a disruption, and that's the part that slows down projects, creates risk, and increases the price tag. So when you're evaluating software, you not only want to look at the functionality of the software, but you also want to understand what are we really going to spend in terms of time, money, and risk on deploying this project so that we can make an educated and informed decision. Too often organizations make a decision with inaccurate information, and with the benefit of hindsight, they may have determined that that was the wrong decision, but they didn't have complete information during the evaluation phase. So this is an important aspect of making sure that you are going in with your eyes wide open into your evaluation process. Another thing to consider as you're evaluating potential software systems is fully understanding the deployment model of the technology, especially in today's day and age where we're in a sort of transition from a lot of on-premise systems moving to a version of the cloud. And this is a big pitfall because a lot of times organizations sign a contract, go to deploy the software without fully realizing or understanding what type of software it is they're buying. Software vendors themselves in many cases are transitioning, so they may show you one thing but then deliver or sell to you something different when it comes time to sign the deal and get started on the implementation. And so it's important to understand the three different basic deployment models. The first model is on-premise, and this is the historic model of deploying ERP systems where you install the software on a server within your four walls, within your IT server room, and you can do whatever you want with that software, for better or for worse. Most software vendors are moving away from that model, but there's still a certain number of software providers that do provide on-premise solutions in part or in whole. Sometimes they'll have certain modules that are still on-premise. Other times they'll have a hybrid of both, which leads us to cloud. Just because the software is in the cloud doesn't mean that all cloud solutions are created equally. You have two different primary types of cloud solutions. You have private cloud, which is sort of a middle ground between on-premise and fully public cloud, where you still have your own version or instance of the software, but it's hosted in someone else's cloud, whether it be your software vendor or Azure or Amazon Web Services or whoever it may be. This allows you to have cloud technology, but also the flexibility to customize and change the software that you may have been accustomed to with your on-premise model. And then finally, the third model is public cloud, where it's a public version of the cloud. It's usually multi-tenant to where you have multiple companies that are using the same software, protecting your data, of course, but the same core software is being used across all the different customers that are using that solution. This is the least flexible of the three options in most cases, and that's important to know because if there are deficiencies or gaps between what that public cloud solution can do versus what you think you need, that's going to be a lot more disruptive and hard to navigate than if you were going with a private cloud or an on-premise model. So that's one of the big pitfalls, is fully understanding what modules and which capabilities within your software solution tech stack are within each of these three buckets, because that will materially affect not only the level of fit with your business operations, but the level of flexibility and the cost and risk associated with that deployment. Contrary to popular belief, you do not have to choose just one ERP system. And this is a common pitfall that a lot of organizations fall into, largely because there's so much pressure from software vendors to double down on one solution, and largely because it sounds so good in theory, especially at the executive level within organizations. It sounds a lot better to buy one system that handles all of my needs rather than buying 5 or 7 different systems that handle different things within the organization. And if I'm an IT staff member, I love the idea of one system because now I don't have to maintain 5 or 7 different systems. I can just maintain that one. However, the reality is that that may not be the best fit for your organization. In fact, we're finding that in recent years, it's becoming increasingly common for organizations to intentionally want multiple systems, not because they want technical complexity, not because they want two different sources of truth or they want to add cost and complexity to their environment, but because they know it gives them a certain amount of flexibility to allow them to navigate all the changes that their businesses are going through and to address the deficiencies and the weaknesses of the different systems that they're deploying. So the best of breed model, the composable ERP model, that trend is continuing here in the late 2020s. And that's something you should be aware of, is you don't have to choose just one system. It may mean that you want to look at different categories of technologies and mix and match to find the right solution that fits best for you. Almost like a puzzle that's built just for you. You need to find those pieces and put it together in a way that fits you and completes the picture of what it is you're trying to accomplish as an organization. So these are 5 of the things that we see as common pitfalls in software evaluation processes, but I'd love to hear from you. What pitfalls have you seen? What pitfalls have you experienced? How did you overcome them? Please leave your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to see what you think there. And if you'd like to learn more about how to manage your software evaluation and procurement process, be sure to check out our software selection buyer's guide. You can find that by scanning the QR code right here, or you can go to the links below. So I hope you found this information useful and hope you have a great day. What are those pitfalls and what can you do to avoid them? That's what we'll talk about here today.
That was kind of redundant.
Okay. The good news is it's a fairly simple answer.